All right, so here we go. So I don't have too many links, but this has been a very exciting week. And that's why, as most of our government seems to be completely collapsing, certain parts of America are great. And one of them is the um, the media. The media, I think, is the one thing that's still working really well, and the sales. So now everybody's pushing out books because obviously this is 2-month period is when you can sell a book about Trump. So all the tell-all books are dumping, and it's so the amount of dirt on Trump is just mind-boggling, and it all hits at once. So I'm glad somebody made this summary of like the past 12 hours. So Trump lied about the COVID. He totally knew about it, and he deliberately told everyone lies and did not prepare, and then put it on tape, which is just amazing. Like Nixon, I mean, and that's why I thought it's funny when the Fox News guys hit, they didn't start complaining about, why did he get us all killed? They said, why did he give interviews to journalists? Everyone should know you never tell the truth. Anyway, then you got the DHS was concealing the white supremacist threat and lying about the Russian threat, which they're doing again, and exaggerating the Antifa threat. And then Trump just wanted to impress someone. So once again, he just dumped nuclear secrets to impress Woodward, which he did before. When he was newly in election, he went to Mar-a-Lago and just posed with the guy carrying the football. Hey, this guy's the nuclear secrets. Look at this guy. Hey, let's get his autograph. Isn't this fun? Because he just has no clue what's going on as president. And then that was showing actions how to destroy. Mattis says he's betraying America. And then they're trying to muzzle Fauci. Ordering him to stop whining about that coronavirus thing, just shut up and get on board with the official line that we've totally solved the coronavirus. So anyway, that gives you a nice summary. And so the hostile stuff, this one came from Microsoft, showing that, of course, everybody is targeting our election, although it's a little deceiving, this kind of headline, Russian, Chinese, and Iranian hackers. Russia is like 99% of it. Russia is the main person that interferes in our election. These other people are sending phishing emails to American companies and stuff, and attacking Biden's team. I hacked all of them, but it's mainly the Russians.
Silicon Valley's biggest companies by surprise in 2016.
Yeah. Anyway, and so the Kremlin hit a lot of people, and they're totally doing it again, and they're working with Trump again and with Giuliani again. And this is how Giuliani got Trump impeached, and he's doing it again. He's meeting with Ukrainian agents, and this guy was just sanctioned as a Russian spy, and Giuliani's meeting with him and getting information from him, which he's using in the Trump campaign, which is always his thing. He created the whole situation where Trump got impeached, and he's absolutely doing it again. So it's interesting to watch. And this one here is, like as usual, there's so many disasters in the Trump administration, you can't keep up with them. So this one is all mainly about the coronavirus. But if you go to the very end, there's a paragraph about the cyber war problem. And here, they found evidence that the Russians did in fact get in. Now, all the reports of people attacking our systems always say, well, they didn't get in. And I wonder about that. And I think there's two reasons why it says that. The first thing, they will never admit they got it. They will cover it up. And the second thing is, of course, it's like us catching cheaters. You only know the ones you caught. So the fact that you found one attack that did not get through probably means that's the tip of the iceberg, and the others did get through. But here's the one. The Russians actually put malware in the election registration systems of 2 Florida counties, which is the thing to do. And the other thing that I heard in these articles that made it much more clear to me. One thing I'd heard many times is that the Trump campaign had slipped their polling data to the Russians. And I'm like, who cares about the polling data? Why is that important? They said that's how they plan the targeted disinformation. And, Trump got in because of just a couple of counties in Florida. And so that's what they did with the meddling on Facebook and with other things. They use demographic polling information to find a small group of voters that will sway the election, and then they target just those voters. It's very much like what we did to Iran. You target the nuclear isotope separators, and you don't mess with anything else. That's how you get away with things. You use like a spearfish to make a small attack right where it will hurt. So anyway, and they're kicking out 1,000 Chinese nationals, claiming that they have connections to the military, which is, of course, part of Trump's propaganda campaign, that the real problem is China, and we have to be really mad at China. And that's why a lot of people at least a year ago, a lot of people were supporting Trump, saying that despite all of his manifest personality problems, he is finally doing something about China, whereas Obama was just totally cozying up with China. So anyway, it's a big week in cyber war, and it's going to keep this way for the next 8 weeks. And the thing that surprised me, my first reaction, everyone said, this is going to finally be it. Trump is going to go down. And I'm like, no, he'll never go down. But the thing is, this is how you do it. You will never get the 40% of people that love Trump. They will never leave him no matter what he did. He said right from the start, I could just pull out a gun and shoot someone right in the middle of Times Square and nobody would care. And those people will never leave. But the point is, he needs to get about 5% of other people in. So he's trying to come up with something to suck in a few more people. And this is how Biden can win, by just constantly assaulting him with scandal after scandal. So he just has to scramble to hold his base and he can't expand to someone else. So, but Giuliani was trying to make the October surprise, which was going to be this Russian thing, and it failed so far. So far, the flood of everybody dumping on Trump is holding him back, but they have to keep it up for another 8 weeks. So something really dramatic is going to continue to build to a crescendo with more and more dramatic revelations. Anyway.
Geez, what are they gonna find in 8 weeks?
Yeah, well, I mean, they can even come up with a total lie. Like last time, it was Comey. Comey just released a statement that Anthony Weiner's laptop had been found with Hillary's email on it, and that was enough to make Trump win, because it was enough to sway it by a couple of percentage right before the election. And there was no truth to it at all. It was totally not anything new. But see, that's why Trump was so afraid of Biden, because he managed to make people hate Hillary. A bunch of stuff stuck to Hillary. Benghazi, the emails, and other stuff. A lot of people hated Hillary, and nobody much hates Biden. There's really nothing. He's trying to convince you he's senile or he's a pawn of AOC or something, but none of that is sticking.
I almost don't think it matters what he does at this point, because people don't seem to care. Like, it's just one horrific thing after another. And it seems like there are no consequences.
Right.
Well, I thought so, but I heard some analysis that made me feel better, because the point is, for people like us that pay attention and are educated about it, political analysts and people that read a lot of news, we've already made up our mind years ago, so we don't matter. I mean, we're in one camp or the other, and we'll never move. But the election will be decided by the swing voters, and the swing voters are people that don't actually read the news much. They're typically not college educated. They don't really care much. And it's all going to be whether one exciting scandal in like a week before the election tips them. And that's what's going on here. And so if we can you need to keep a drumbeat of attack on Trump so that he can never like start growing a sprout to other people. You nip them off before they grow. And so far, the Biden camp has been dominating this and controlling the narrative. Trump is on defense all the time, which is in the days of like 2016, he was on the offense and Hillary was on defense. He was winning, and she was like trying to explain away her emails or something, and he was roaring about lock her up and having people cheer for him. And now it's the other way. So it looks to me like Biden is winning, but there's still time for an October surprise. And Giuliani and the Russians and everyone will be trying to invent one. They'll hack into an email server and dump something, but now they don't have WikiLeaks to launder it. The one thing that I've been wondering is why they don't just kill Biden or poison him. That's the Russian solution. Putin is totally in this. He poisons people all the time, and they wouldn't even have to kill him. All they'd have to do would be to slip him something that makes him sort of stupid and confused during the debates. And if I was in Biden's team, I would have him surrounded like the old medieval kings of someone tasting his food and everything at this point, because that would seem like the logical path to victory. Anyway.
We revert to medieval tactics in order to win.
Well, I'm used to imagining that can't happen in America, but we have had more political assassinations than any other nation. I mean, our presidents get shot and killed a lot. It is, in fact, just as common here to secure victory by killing your enemy as in other nations. And it's very much a Russian technique. And his campaign is basically all the Russian production. So I'm surprised it hasn't already happened. There was a lot of rumors about it happening to Hillary, but it didn't seem like it did happen. Anyway, well, I mean, they have to do something. The number of people that are going to go down is enormous. Anyway, so vulnerability disclosure policies, that would be nice.
Yeah, so this is kind of cool. We're actually, in my opinion, moving in the right direction here in that the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency is ordering the rest of the government to actually come up with vulnerability disclosure programs. So I was happy to see this. The implementation we'll see about that, but I think it's definitely a move in the right direction.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Not, I tend to agree, maybe not a bug bounty program, at least a bug disclosure program.
Right.
So you can tell people. Yeah.
Right, because the problem is you can't find a way. We've all been there. We can't find a way to report problems that we find, and so there's nothing you can do right now. They have like a form you can email to them, which isn't really great either. So
At least that implies that they can't just lock you up for telling them. And
right, you have got a
Right.
paper trail there. So that's a good point. But I think this is definitely a smart move. So
yeah, it sounds good.
it's I'm always pleasantly surprised when I see the government doing something right. So I wanna call it out.
Yeah, that's the problem with working in the government. You get overly cynical. Anyway, so Tesla can detect, oh yeah, you try to soup up your Tesla.
Right, because everything is software based.
Yeah.
They haven't changed their hardware in forever today. From what I've heard, when I've done my research in possibly going down the road of Tesla, they haven't changed their hardware in quite some time. They just keep manufacturing the same car. They just do software upgrades. So it makes sense that you could make a device that would enable the things that they're hiding behind paying a couple $1,000s.
So when you get a cheap Tesla, you're getting like XP Home Edition.
Yep.
All the stuff is there, but it's just turned off.
Yep.
Yep. So this little thing, the Nice Try module, was invented that would enable all those things. And in some latest update, now the Tesla car triggers it and says, "Hey, you have something that wasn't part of the car." I think they're already building a device to counter that. So the cat and mouse game is just ongoing. But I really like the last quote of this article. It says, customers say you don't really own a Tesla because the company controls it remotely. You can do whatever they want. And that was my feeling after researching Tesla. I went, nah, I'm not going to get a Tesla after all. That's the idea, but nah.
Yeah. I'm not really cool with the remote shutdown option.
Remote shutdown. You're driving and Tesla says, "Oop, you didn't pay your whatever this month. We're just turning it off." Wait.
Well, they've done it before for like the cops if
Sure.
they're pursuing someone, and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I really wasn't into that feature.
But does Tesla actually shut off your car for some stupid reason? That would be annoying.
Right.
They can.
Well, they can.
Which also means that if somebody can figure it out, they could do it too.
Exactly.
Launch an attack against the car and turn it off.
Exactly.
Well, that's the whole thing with IoT, right? You buy there was one of the doorbell home smart or doorbell company said, "Oh, we decided we're tired of supporting it. We're going to turn off all your doorbells next month. Have a nice day." And you're like, "Wait, what? Wait."
Yeah. Yes.
It was, I think Kmart did that. They sold music for years. And then they said, "Oh, it's too hard to run the DRM server. We're turning it off. All your music is not going to play. We recommend that you get hacking software and break the DRM on all your music. Otherwise, it's going to not run anymore." And they're like, "Wait, what? You could do that?"
So your car really does have advanced endpoint protection, Sam.
Yeah. My car is not dependent on the internet or pretty much anything, just the hamsters. If the hamsters get tired, it stops. But other than that, nothing can happen to my car. Anyway, all right. And so Kaitlyn's got security by obscurity.
Right. And I don't agree with this author too much, but it's a good idea to review our best practices.
Yep.
And so the author starts off by saying, well, here's some things we always do when we're programming. Never roll your own crypto. Mm-hmm. Always use TLS, and security by obscurity is bad. And the author says, well, is that really true? Is security by obscurity really bad? I mean, it certainly can't can't hurt if you're actually doing everything else right. And basically what the author does is says, look at this equation here, risk equals likelihood times impact.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with security by obscurity is that you think that the likelihood is going down more than it is. And so I think this should still be an axiom. Like, don't use security by obscurity. Like your security should be able to withstand being completely out in the open. Like people should know that there's something secure here, and you should feel confident that even if people know about it, it's not going to get hacked. But the author does compare it to camouflage, and I think that's an apt comparison, because you can imagine security by obscurity being like, here's the door to our building, and instead of putting on a lock or any sort of like perimeter security, we're just going to make it look like bricks. So people will just walk by the door. And that's what you're doing with security by obscurity. It doesn't hurt. But I thought this was a good article to go over and kind of re-examine our axioms because I do find myself using a little bit of security by obscurity just to make things less attackable by automated bots. And the author goes on to say things like, well, if your SSH port is on 64,000, it's less likely to get attacked by bots. But of course, if someone is specifically attacking you and wants to get your data, it's not going to help much. So.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with the author, because I pushed like obfuscating Android source code, and I watched DEF CON guys, I could break through that. And I said, yeah, you can, but that's true of every security. And Bruce Schneier said, security through obscurity is all you have. You can have the most sophisticated mathematical thing, but there is some way to get through, and you're just hoping they haven't found it yet. I think it's definitely worth doing, making things a little harder to get in.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't think we should take it away as an axiom, because I think the human error is, like I said, we overestimate the amount of likelihood that it goes down if you use obscurity.
Well, I think any simple rule like that is just too generalized. I think you have to say that you have to do threat modeling. You have to decide what the threats are and which ones you're going to stop and how much you're going to stop them. And it's not as simple as one procedure is good or one procedure is bad. You have to find a balance of controls that lower your risk to an acceptable level.
The problem is we're not dealing with everyone who is a security head. We have to deal with programmers who don't care about security that much, who are told just to do their job, and we have to give them very simple rules.
Yeah.
Or else, and we tell them, oh no, security by obscurity is a good practice, and you should always do whatever you can to reduce the likelihood of being attacked, and the programmer's going to run with that and make their entire model dependent on security through obscurity, which is not a good idea.
Yeah. Another thing I used to worry about was educating end users. In a way, it's kind of pointless to educate end users, because once they learn not to do something, everyone will just attack a different way. So in a way, whatever everybody is doing is never the right thing.
Right. Well, at the end users too, I feel like if we're end users responsible for security, we're not doing our job. The end users really should not be should not have to worry about,
They shouldn't have the brunt of the weight.
Yeah.
It's an interesting issue. The question is, could the end users contribute something? That's why I think Google is the countermeasure. They said they switched to two-factor authentication on everything. Everybody has to carry their YubiKey all the time. And they said that made a huge difference.
Right.
So that's putting it on the end users. But to some extent, the end users can help.
Well, what I'm thinking about is like email training.
Yeah.
Preventing phishing by educating users and making them responsible for not clicking emails in their email. I feel like YubiKey is more of a developer responsibility, where they say, well, if you want to get in, you need to have two factors. And I don't feel like that's putting security on the users. It's just giving them.
I would like to see actual data. I'd like to see people show that security awareness training, does it matter or not? It's certainly popular. I know I've been talking to Liz about this. When you're at a company, they have all these useless training meetings where you have to spend hours watching this crap that is of no value. Mm-hmm. And yet it's become very popular to force everyone to do this. And I wonder if anyone measures how effective it is.
Not very.
That's my impression, but I haven't seen scientific analysis. You know, I
Right.
ought to take a company like 2 years before, no awareness training. How many times do we get infected? Then we had awareness training. Look at the huge drop in infections. I wonder if that's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. And so then I got another one even bigger, which is all the domestic threats. And this one here is very interesting. And I didn't agree with any of this, but these guys are the experts. They got the experts on election security to talk about what they think is going to go wrong. And it did not agree with me, but they're supposedly the experts. So these guys say people hack in and change the votes. The social media campaign from things like the Chinese and stuff will come in, and there's various, each one of these experts has their idea of what could go wrong. And the last one is the one most directly related to computer security. This is Matt Blaze, who is the technical security expert to keep saying, don't vote online. And so he's talking about how he thinks you'll have trouble counting the votes. And so anyway, there's a lot of people are concerned about this coming election. I certainly am, because the thing I heard that affected me the most is that the Democrats will vote by mail and Republicans will vote in person, and the mail ballots just sit locked in a warehouse and are counted for over the next 3 weeks after the election. So Trump will appear to win on election night, and then a bunch of votes that came in by mail will gradually make him lose. So I think he'll claim victory and his supporters will riot and stuff to defend it. And they have a lot of this discussion, but anyway, there's a huge amount of manipulation of the local media trying to do this, and a lot of people are trying to figure out what to do. Trump is trying to push that there's this Antifa group that is killing people, and that's the thing to push against. And I thought that one of the fun things about that was this group, these hippie photographers went up to take pictures of the fire in Oregon a few days ago. So they got spotted by locals driving around taking pictures, and they decided that they were Antifa terrorists lighting the fires. And so a bunch of armed militia in Oregon started posting their pictures of them and their license plate and tracking them down and going out like Kyle Rittenhouse to end the world of this Antifa threat, until the cops actually had to issue an official alert. No, Antifa people are not lighting the wildfires. Please do not get your buddies and your pickup trucks and your shotguns and hunt down the Antifa people. But they didn't bother to do that until the next day. So, this is why people get worried about the QAnon cult, and there's some people that think we're headed for an armed insurgency, where these crazed armed groups are going to revolt. And the studies show that the white supremacists are the big danger. They've killed like 300 people in the last 10 years, and the left-winger extremists have not killed anybody. Or so they say, although I think they finally did a week ago. They shot somebody.
Yeah, I think that was more of what happened is somebody was being assaulted and they overreacted. So it's I mean, there's a big difference between someone pepper spraying you and then shooting them back versus someone who goes out to a rally with a gun specifically to, kill protesters. So I don't know if that, how much that counts as left-wing violence, but.
Well, yes, and it's very unclear, but I think that's why I certainly hope we get rid of Trump, because he yells about the media is all terrorists. You need to lock up my political opponents. All the Democrats are just destroying the cities, and his crazier followers get stirred up and go out with guns and start killing people. It's really not okay for a president to talk about that and divide the country.
Yeah, right-wing violence has always been a big issue in America.
Yeah.
And I think whenever we talk about left-wing versus right-wing, there's always this push of both sidesism, where you have to always point out that yes, the left-wing can be violent too, and there certainly are left-wing shooters, and there have been left-wing murderers who killed because they didn't like Republicans. But I think it's also important, like if we want to get past this, we really need to be honest with ourselves and do point out that the vast majority of violence is coming from right-wing extremists, not right-wing people in general, but these right-wing extremist groups and white nationalists.
It's a pendulum. I mean, there was a time when it was the Soviet Union. It was the people on the left that were the dangerous people trying to overthrow the government, but that's not the current situation in America. It's not equal right now. And I know
was the wait, the Soviet Union tried to overthrow America?
American in the 30s. In the
Yeah.
1930s, there were a lot of communists in America that wanted to overthrow the government. And that was the rate. And that was the issue here. They're trying to do it again. They're trying to have an Un-American Activities Committee again. They've got it. They're tracking down people who push anti-American propaganda and white privilege. And they see this as this is the new House Un-American Activities Commission. The U.S. government is now trying to hunt these down and say that they are the risk. And of course, they are not the risk. And objective observers like Ann Applebaum from Poland say, it is amazing that people think the left is the current fascist threat in America. It's the right now. But in other countries, it has been the left, like the USSR. So, I mean, both extremes will create a similar nightmare if they get what they want. You really need like a balance and people in the middle. And right now, we're way over on the right. But anyway, it's
and I mean, furthermore, I think that I've noticed a real trend over the past couple of years of really vilifying any moderates from both sides, which, I mean, I guess that's still hard for me to get.
Well, I mean, there is the issue that there's a lot of people who really fall into the camp of the there's a name for this, like the middle fallacy or something, where
Centrists?
No, not centrist, but there's a fallacy in which people tend to believe that, well, if you have one side saying one thing, another side saying another thing, well, the truth must be somewhere in the middle.
right.
And I think a lot of times that's just not the case.
Yeah.
And the people that do think like that oftentimes really annoy me, because they are, like, for example, like when Trump said at that rally, well, there are good people on both sides.
Right.
That really upset me, because it puts anti-fascists and people who are being killed by white nationalists, and that kind of is kind of the same thing as the Nazis. And it's like, no, there's a right side and a wrong side to that.
Yeah. No, I think this is an issue. And I think when you come to a time of war, where people say you have to pick one side or the other, you can't just sit in the middle. But in fact, we don't want either side to win here in general. But right now, the people that you're calling far left just want a normal America. And the people on the far right want a crazy place you don't want to be in. So right now, pushing on the left is a logical way to get us back to the middle. But that's not a permanent situation. The people on the left are just as crazy. And this is why I thought it was funny when the primaries, when Bernie was running, and he gave an interview to one of the NPR channels. And this guy said, let's talk about what happened in Nicaragua in the 70s, because I'm really old and I lived through this. Bernie was totally on side of like the communist revolutions in Central America. And when they won and they started executing people and turning it into a horrible place, he was still defending them, saying, well, they're better than the other side. And that's why a lot of people are afraid of Bernie, because he really is kind of a flaming red flag waving communist that would like to turn this place into a socialist. His idea of socialism has been way over on the left, too far to the left, and he didn't want to talk about it at all. He got up to storm out of the interview. Well, the interview's over. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And they had to sort of talk him down and keep him there, because that's his source point. So, I mean, there is a left extreme that exists, and there are people who would like to go there. It's not.
I saw a documentary on a bunch of Cuban immigrants that are like hardcore Trump supporters, and I'm like, how is it possible? Well, it's because of what you just said. They're afraid that it's going to end up like Castro's Cuba.
Yeah, that's right. And they're saying that's why Trump actually has a surprisingly large portion of the Hispanic vote, which is, after the way he talked about Mexicans, you would think he never would, but this is why.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the things that was really like just a total mystery to me for a long time. And then I started to understand like why that makes sense. Now, I don't necessarily think that having universal health care and making sure that, you know, people are fed and able to go to school is necessarily going to turn out like, you know, Castro's Cuba or the USSR. But that's the narrative that's being pushed.
Yeah, and there's a similar one for black voters. I heard a black analyst talk about it, and she said, look, we know that Trump is racist, but that isn't going to get people to the voting booth. It's not like they think Biden's that much better on that. That's why it was very interesting. You know, to us, it's like obvious. Look, what a filthy pig he is. Clearly, that group will vote against him. They say, well, that's not true. We're not single issue voters. If Trump is racist, we can see that, but that doesn't motivate people to get out of bed and vote for Biden. You have to have something actual positive that Biden would do for them to get them to do that. Anyway, it's very interesting. And we're living through an exciting time. This is going to be in the history books. This is going to be huge, like World War II, the point when America pivoted and changed one way or the other. Anyway, we got the new hotness.
Yeah, so this one just essentially really relates to Kaitlyn's last story in my mind, because it's just yet another way that another vector we're really not paying attention to that we should, which is the way that sorry, there's like people walking around on my roof right now.
What that was. Sorry.
Yeah, there's like some very large men walking around the roof.
Is it criming going on?
No,
Often.
if there is, they had a very good facsimile of a HVAC company work van, so their cover is great.
So it could be the NSA like planting surveillance devices in your roof to like track your dangerous activities.
Yes, it wouldn't be very hard to, and it wouldn't be very hard to track me because I'm always in the same spot now.
Well, that's true of all of us, I think. Like, I thought it's funny. I went to the dentist. He said, have you been out? I said, I haven't been anywhere. Nobody has.
Right. Some people are taking trips, and you know, one of my colleagues just said they went down to Mexico the other day with their wife. So I didn't know the border was open, but apparently they are. So anyway, yeah, this is a good story. This is not a surprise to me on any level. But I loved the sub headline, which is most developers are highly intelligent but also highly stupid. Yes, that's true in my experience.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and
I've been accused of exactly that many times.
Yep. Same here. I definitely resemble that remark.
Yeah.
So I thought this was good. You know, it's essentially covers why supply chain attacks are becoming so frequent and usable. And one of my favorite aspects of this article was essentially where this guy is talking about how some developers will literally run any bullshit they find on Stack Overflow. Because it's true. Nobody vets anything. If you find it in a GitHub repo and it's open source, fine, go ahead, include it in your project. So essentially what attackers are doing is looking at a product, mapping out the software stack that they used to build it, and then going and attacking those dependencies. All they have to do is inject something nasty into maybe an open source dependency that they're using, contribute some malicious code. Why not? Or to start going in there and finding all the lazy things that developers do, like leaving credentials laying around and sensitive info and stuff like that. So, a big part of the issue here is that we still do not put much stock in having a secure development process. So a lot of these projects are just open from the start, and that's really not changing anytime soon. Security is just seen as an overhead, more overhead, and a limitation to pushing out releases faster.
Yep.
You know, just ship it, just ship it, just ship it was the constant drumbeat when I was a software developer. No one cared about doing it right. No one cared about you know, having a robust, secure product that worked. It was just about shipping it.
Yep. You know, I've done this so many times. When I developed the first ethical hacking class like 15 years ago, everything was so difficult. I was often working 36 hours straight to get something working because there were these old versions of Linux. Nothing worked. So one time I needed this driver and I couldn't find it. And I found this dark web 1 gigabyte of Iranian malware in some foreign language that had a string that looked like about the right file name. And I started downloading it when I said, you know, what am I doing? I'm going to just shut down the computer and try again tomorrow. I've wandered off into a dark swamp of insanity.
Yeah, and it's there. And imagine if your whole career, imagine you've got kids in an expensive house in the Bay Area, and your whole career kind of hangs on whether your manager / corporate overlords will allow you to keep your job. You're not going to give any kind of care or consideration to security. You're going to get that Iranian malware and use it in your project. That's what's going to get you. Yep, if that's what's going to get you through stand up the next day without getting fired, well, sure, you are going to include it in your project.
Well, and like I say, when people like Kaz look at my code, they discover that almost all my stuff is thrown together in this god-awful haphazard manner, because usually it's like classes in 1 hour. I need this to work.
And to a large extent, I can't blame software developers. I've been there. I know. I understand the pressure. I understand the priorities in this business. And it's just yet another aspect of our broken tech culture that we, you know, if we want to change this, if there's any kind of incentive to change the security landscape, you know, we've got to make some fundamental cultural changes.
Well, you know, it is in my military job, I can't do this. Everything is like sandboxed. I have to use the official Microsoft tool. I don't have administrator rights. And it's very, very annoying. Every time I try to do something, I can't do it the way I usually do things.
Right.
So, I mean, being secure is really, really annoying.
It is. It's annoying. It's inconvenient. It slows you down. And I mean, developers they'll conceal stuff from their security team because they don't want to be limited a lot of the time. And I mean, again, I can't, it's a terrible practice, but I can't blame them. They're just trying to keep their jobs.
It's almost like academic work, as we found at colleges. The only way to get anything done is to somehow ignore everything that comes from administration. The administration has no idea what you need to do, and all their rules are just like idiots throwing sand into gears to stop all progress. And the first rule is to somehow evade all of their instructions.
Right.
Well, it's a strange world we live in. These people that think they're in charge are not really in charge at all. It's sort of like little kids getting away with stuff because their parents won't find out they did the bad thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, then we got the YubiKeys.
Yeah, there's finally a YubiKey for USB-C.
Oh,
So
there hasn't been one?
There hasn't been one, and now there is.
So how could anybody use a Mac?
Oh, you would have to get the adapter.
Oh.
You have dongle.
Yeah, from A to C and plug it in. That's how I've been using it.
But you know, you could put malware in the dongle. You could put hardware Trojans in the dongle.
Yeah. Or do something like what Liz is showing USB ports.
Looks like a hub. Liz, I think your sound is out.
Oh yeah, I just ordered this one off of Amazon for like $35, and I was thinking, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on with the firmware for this thing. It would be, you know, it would be so easy to get somebody to just plug one of these in, especially if you sold them to a tech company where lots of people were plugging their computers into them in the cafeteria or in the presentations, and there you go.
I've seen these the USB keys that will destroy your machine, and I've seen these Chinese ones that have inferior components in them and stuff. You could totally do that. Just make it cheap, sell 1 million of them to Fry's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
there's
so this is-
finally one that is native, USB-C
Yeah.
native with NFC.
yeah, that seems like a big step forward, and getting an actual brand name device so you know it's not like the cheap Chinese knockoff.
Yep.
That's what I would want at my company. If this thing is actually supposed to be a security boundary, you ought to actually protect the hardware a little bit. Although I suppose all these are probably made in China.
This is the reputable Powlakin brand, so what could go wrong?
Reputable what?
This is the reputable Powlakin brand, so what could go wrong?
Yeah, I don't know. Of course, I don't know where Unico is. They don't sound like an American company. Anyway. All right. And we got what? Oh, that's honeypots. Oh, these things are fun.
Oh yeah, I know. I love honeypots.
Yeah.
99% of the threats that you face are these normal bots that are going around all the time, attacking your servers and not getting in. And I think it's really interesting to get a pulse on what these bots are doing right now, every so often. This person set up an SSH honeypot and just looked at all the bots that tried to brute force their way in. And of course, most of the top usernames are, of course, root, admin, user, test, etc. There's Oracle and Postgres and Usario for some reason. I don't know what Usario is, but it must be something. And of course, the most common passwords are what you would expect: root, user, 1234556, tests.
Mhm.
You know, there were a few interesting ones. There was a user. There was Baikal, a lake in Siberia, which was a password that was commonly used, I suppose. Mima is Mandarin for no password, which was used quite a bit. And I find it really interesting that these SSH, these supposedly Chinese SSH servers are expecting users to type in Chinese passwords in Latin characters, but I guess I don't know how else it would work.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so most of the attacks, of course, are coming from China. Once in a while, you'll get something from like Russia or France or Japan, but the biggest country, the biggest source of these threats are coming from China or Chinese servers, likely from servers that have been compromised, by the way, which has been my. But a few are obviously coming from like Azure boxes that people have been buying up.
Are Azure boxes in China?
No, in the United States. So 2.2% of the IPs are coming from Microsoft. So I assume that's Azure. Yeah. Whereas 21.7% are coming from ChinaNet 8, 20% are coming from ChinaNet J, and 13% are coming from ChinaNet B. So it's the vast majority are coming from China.
Yeah, and only a tiny amount from Tor. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Interesting things. I know when I've run honeypots, the passwords they try are very strange. Not at all the top 10 passwords you would expect.
Right. I mean, what they're going for are they're trying to find very specific devices oftentimes. And so you'll have things like they'll try. There was a good one here where the password was J5CMMU equal KYF0, and it's like, why would someone do this? Well, it turns out it's like one of the it doesn't appear in any word list or anything, but apparently like it's probably used as a DVR default password or something.
Yeah, the default password for the specific thing you're targeting.
Yeah.
This is a big issue that I came across in the Stuxnet attack. Part of a professional attack is the targeting, where you don't attack just everything, because then you'll just get caught and put in the antivirus lists. You have part of your malware that figures out if you're really the target.
Right.
I really love this blog. The guy that writes it is brilliant and has, I don't know if he's still there, but he's led a security team at Google for a while and is one of the primaries that makes the Google CTF. Just a really, really brilliant, interesting person. Great blog.
Yeah, sounds great. And this one here is great fun. Giggle. I heard about this just a couple of days ago. There were these angry tweets about Giggle. These guys are bums. And I'm like, and then they said they were some kind of 4-letter acronym I'd never heard of. And I said, what's going on here? But then they said it's a bad word app. And I said, oh, I'm not reading anything else. I downloaded the app. So I installed this thing, and it's some kind of social network that the first thing you have to do is take a selfie to prove that you're a woman, because only women can use this app. So I went and got a magazine with a picture of a woman on the cover and took a picture of that, and it didn't fall for it. So I couldn't make an account, and I tested what I could, but I couldn't find a big security problem. And I said, well, I don't know, maybe it's something else, not, and explain what it's all about. And this is it.
Sam, have you tried just putting on like some makeup or something?
No, they said all you have to do is put on lipstick, which I don't happen to have. But yeah, I didn't try that. I just tried holding.
You don't have any lipstick laying around your house?
I don't. So I need this as part of my pen testing arsenal. I hadn't realized that that was an essential part of my toolkit. Anyway,
you could probably just use some red Sharpie or something.
I don't have that either, and I'm not sure I want to do that. I think anyway.
No, I would have suggested fruit roll-ups, but okay, yeah.
Well,
red Sharpies in your mouth. That's a good idea.
I have a bunch of red beets. I've been eating a lot of red beets.
Oh, there you go. That would work.
Red beet juice. Anyway, so the person who did have the red makeup got in and found these flaws, which is pretty hilarious. And the flaws are like mind-boggling. This is the only other app I've seen that actually does this was the Houston Alumni app. What it does is when you look for a user, it passes a command from the app up to the server. It doesn't pass the data. It passes a command right here, like operator equal value here. So you can just, this is a command. This is like mind-boggling. They give you command injection right in the API. You can just put other commands there and execute those commands on the server. So in addition to the usual flaws, it's just got deliberate literal command injection. And so he found this, which whoever did this research, he or she, and of course, then tried to tell them, and they were idiots and said, oh, we're secure, there's nothing to worry about. And the other thing is this picture they take to prove that you're a woman, they say, don't worry, we won't save that or anything. And they're totally saving that. And when you delete your account, they're still saving it. And it's got unsecured direct object access. So all you have to do is go and burp and change it to someone else's name, and you'll see those pictures they took. And the reason why they only let women in is because a lot of these people are like sex workers, and they're talking about their illicit sexual activities on here. So there's private stuff in there that you really don't want people seeing.
Right, but first off, if they're concerned about that, there are female cops and investigators, so that doesn't really make sense. And second, what if you're like Butch or you just don't wear makeup? I mean,
there are just so many problems. Anyway, the four-letter acronym, I've forgotten it already. Apparently,
isn't it
TERF? TERF, trans.
Yeah, that's it.
Inclusionary radical feminist.
Can someone explain this? I really don't understand it.
Yes, essentially, it's a subset of feminism that rejects the thought that trans women are women. So it's sort of I've only met like one or two people who espouse this idea. I think it's a pretty rare thing, but I don't know, rare but vocal contingent of people who think that it's wrong to consider trans women to be women. So they tend to
it's the biggest arm of feminism.
Well, I hear about it from the right. Like, remember a few years ago, there was this huge storm about trans people because Trump said we can't let trans people in the military, and all these right-wingers said they're going to let men in the women's bathroom, and that will end the world. And
that's
the bathrooms multi-gender, and after about a week, everyone sort of got used to it and didn't care anymore. And I said, what was the big deal anyway? But I think this whole thing that there's this group called women, and everyone has to be a woman, and you have to be a proper woman, and if you're a man, you have to be a proper man, and all these people that don't fit neatly in those boxes just need to die. That's an old belief.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I mean, like I said, that these people are bigots, and they obscure their bigotry with, just the way that white nationalists and Nazis use a lot of dog whistles.
Yeah.
To hide their bigotry. These TERFs essentially use feminism to hide their,
Yep.
Well, that's what I noticed. I mean, this whole process of proving you're a woman is suggesting that it's always 100% clear whether you're a woman or not, and all the women are somehow trustworthy in some way, that all the men are not untrustworthy. And I was sort of offended by this. What did you accomplish by only letting in genuine women? Do you really think you've got a pure group? Like, it's like the white nationalists. We're the white people. We're better. Bad things won't happen now because we got rid of all those people.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, however, aside from all the political problems, their computer security is terrible. And their CEO just said, we don't have any security problems. You're just an evil troll. Get lost. And so they spent months trying to get them to pay attention to security and just getting abused and threatened with lawsuits and harassed. This is the one, Sal Grover, that says, we have a security team. There's no security problems. You're just some evil person trolling me. But they eventually managed somehow to get through. She was blocking everybody and sent in a vuln report and threatening them with lawsuits and everything else. But somehow after 3 months, they actually got through to somebody and got it fixed.
This is a really great textbook example of how not to respond to vulnerability disclosures.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it's nice. I think they finally knocked off all the lawsuits and everything, but this is the problem. I mean, it's like people told me years ago, white hatting is stupid. If you analyze some product and you find a flaw and they are not paying you to find the flaw, the correct thing to do is nothing and let them get hacked. It is totally pointless to bother trying to tell them anything unless they paid you or are running a bug bounty program. And that is probably the best advice. I always tell my students that. I don't obey it, but all you do is invite a world of trouble by trying to tell people their security problems when they're not ready to hear it.
And I would argue, even with the bug bounty, unless you're being paid specifically, whether or not you find something or not, don't waste your time.
Yeah, and certainly bug bounties are essentially a waste of time. I've only made a couple $100 out of it. The fact is, when you find something, it's almost always out of scope, or somebody already found it, or they won't pay you. As far as like actually making any money, just working at a real job is far better.
Right. And it devalues the work that goes into this. I mean, because finding bugs is not easy.
Yeah.
And it requires a lot of skill and a lot of time. And the fact that they're like, oh, well, you spent 50 hours finding this bug, here's $100, that devalues, everyone else's work. And
that's why the reason I do it is because I actually have a use for those vulnerable apps. They then become homework.
Right.
So my bug reports become more and more terse because I really would rather be ignored. Say, well, I hope they don't patch this. And then I can use it in homework. And then when people complain, I can say, well, I told them. So anyway, all right. So then we've got, oh yeah, graded by AI. This was hilarious.
Yeah. So it's hilarious, but also awful because people are using these terrible products to auto grade student submissions for homework, and they're just terrible. I mean, I've been on a soapbox about this for a few years, since I learned about how products like Turnitin work.
Here we go. This is the winning explanation of Constantinople.
Yes.
Well, caravan ship India, China, Middle East. You just throw in all the keywords.
Yep.
Then it finds the keywords, then you get an A.
So kids essentially figured out that you could game the system through essentially search engine optimization, where you just stack your essay with keywords. It's kind of like the trick of getting past HR filters with your resume by putting all the keywords in white text at the bottom of your resume to make it past the filters. So it's just kind of we have this powerful technology that we're using in incredibly stupid ways, and now we're using it to either flunk children out of school unjustly, or let them figure out ways to game the system, which I think is kind of interesting.
I think they're learning a lot more by gaming the system than they are from learning about the Constantinople's Byzantine Empire or something.
When I went through grade school in the 70s, it was one of the first, social awareness revolutions, and they decided that we needed to stop being bigoted against people from Central America. So I took this class called Social Studies, which consisted of supposedly memorizing a map of Central America. So you'd know the names of the countries and the rivers and cities, and I could never remember any of them. and then what they did to make money down there. And all I learned was that every Central American company exports bauxite and textiles, and I did not know what either of those things were, but that was the answer to every test. And I eventually learned what textiles were, and it was like 50 years later, last year, I finally found out what the hell bauxite is. It's raw
Yeah, it's
aluminum.
aluminum. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
all I knew was this was the answer to every test, was bauxite and textiles.
Well, and it's interesting because even to take this an even a step further, they don't even have to use what they call the word salad approach, where they just try submitting batches of words. They can actually, one kid said 9 times out of 10, they can just search on the internet and then find word lists and just submit those instead.
Yeah, well.
Or that are the correct answers for each, that will correctly get through the quizzes. And I mean, I found this stuff on the internet before, where it's full lists of test answers and stuff like that. And I mean, a big part of it is because we're shifting to this crappy pre-baked courseware model, which I get why it's happening like that. But I mean, there are some consequences to going with that.
Well, there are some pre-baked courseware that is really very good, like the Cisco stuff. But I was really horrified when I first taught Cisco, because I used to be a teacher that was really worried about cheating. I'd make them do the thing in class and make sure they're not using their book or anything. And the Cisco just has these 10 questions online quizzes where you can totally use Google and everything. And I said, that's going to be awful. And the other more experienced teacher said, it'll be fine. And it was fine, because Cisco had a hands-on final. The final exam is not a test at all. You have a router and you have to set it up and make it go. And they did fine. He said the only purpose of the test is to make them study the book. So they actually have to look up the answers, and that means they sort of read the book. And I switched to that model where the test is not a measure of performance. It's just a way to make sure that you in fact went through the chapter. Right. And that turns out to be working just fine.
Yeah. No, I remember my 8th grade science project. I think, yeah, it must have been my 8th grade science project. I was, I wanted to see if computers could, these pre-baked computer programs, were they actually teaching kids anything? And at the time, this was during like the CD-ROM revolution, and all these like encyclopedias and programs on dinosaurs were coming out and stuff. And so I sat the kids down and we're like, okay, this is a pre-baked thing you're going to learn. And then I went into a class and I taught the kids about dinosaurs myself. So I split up the kids into 2 groups, and then I gave them each a test. And of course, the kids who were sat down in front of a computer doing the pre-baked stuff, they didn't know any of the answers. But when someone actually taught them, they did a lot better. And and it seems like, I found this out a long time ago, that these pre-baked programs just don't work.
Wow.
Yeah,
something about the presentation doesn't work. I think everyone with online Zoom is finding the same thing.
Yeah.
I think that one of the other things too, I mean, this one kid in this article said, I wouldn't have passed Algebra 2 without doing this. I think another problem that we have is making grades so test dependent. One thing I think about the way that we run our classes that makes it successful and reduces the incidence of cheating is that we offer enough opportunities to make up extra credit points through doing additional project work that it's okay if you get a bad grade on quizzes or on tests. And so I think I've noticed, from what I can tell anyway, on the back end, it seems like that leads to less cheating because there's less pressure. So they actually read the chapters and then take the quizzes or tests. And, if they get a bad grade, not a big deal. Just do another extra credit project, which teaches them even more. So I think the other approach to this is set up your courses in ways that's going to make it okay not to cheat, and incentivize actually learning and doing the work.
Yeah, that's the thing that took me a while. I thought of the thing that people needed was discipline and hard work and drudgery. And then I switched to, I could gamify it. So it's actually fun. And that
Right.
does lead to better results. Oh,
Yes.
I grew up in like a Puritan household where it was all like, shut up and hit you with the whip and make you stay in line. And it took me a long time to switch to this California hippie model where instead you like play and have fun.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not a big fan of gamifying everything, but as far as education is concerned, that absolutely should be gamified. That is, you should be enjoying learning. That is something you really want to instill in people.
Yeah, well, I'm on board with it now. It works in my field. Now, I think my sister is very much on the other side. She teaches nursing, and the nurses have to pass this really strict certification exam. And so they really have to cover exactly these topics in just this order and not go outside the lines. And I think in a case like that, you can't do this gamified stuff so much.
I disagree, but I'm not a nurse, so I can't.
Yeah. There are some real rigid things. Anyway, I don't know. Anyway, I'm glad
Is there a game called Operation for that?
What's that?
Is there a game called Operation for that?
Well,
Yeah, play Operation.
I was really bad at that game. My hand isn't steady enough. It reminds me of when we went to DEF CON China and Liz was trying to put chips on a circuit board with chopsticks.
Yes. That was a fun game.
Yeah. All right, so let's see, where are we? This one here, Swiss sign.
So Swiss sign got hit with a DDoS, and Proton Mail got mad and switched over to Let's Encrypt.
Yeah, speaking of devaluing the value of security with bug bounties, Let's Encrypt has lowered the value of certificates down to 0, and that seems to have worked. I first said, they'll just go broke. How can they do that? Somehow it's working. Who's paying for it?
I don't know.
The servers up?
I don't know who is paying for Let's Encrypt.
It's the EFF, isn't it, or something? I didn't think Let's Encrypt could possibly.
Oh, it's sponsored by Mozilla and the EFF.
But Mozilla is totally going down. They're gone totally broke. They were 99% funded by Google, and Google pulled their funding. So they just fired everybody like last month. So I don't know if I would move to Let's Encrypt. How are they going to survive?
Well, it worked at least for the temporary until the DDoS stops.
But certificates used to cost like $1,000 a year, and now it's 0. That doesn't seem sustainable.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
they did it, and yeah.
Apparently, as of a few years ago, the majority of their funding comes from corporate sponsorships.
Oh, I hope so. I hope it's somebody with money like Oracle or Microsoft. That's what needs to happen. Yeah, and anyway, and then we got the last one, smartwatches. Oh.
Yeah, of course. So kids' smartwatches, what could possibly go wrong? And the answer is, of course, a lot.
Why would your kid need a smartwatch?
So you can track them.
Have you obviously don't spend a whole lot of time with kids, Sam. They absolutely love smartwatches. They love, they always want their own stuff.
Would, and not for any good reason.
Well, oh my God, when I was a kid, like I had so many watches. The watches were the thing.
Yes.
And I noticed this in my family too. Like all the kids in my family just love watches, and they have the newest smartwatches and everything, and they think it's the best and it's so cool. But of course, a lot of these smartwatches don't just connect to like a phone if you have it. They have their own like 3G circuits in there. So they're like fully internet connected, and they're of course Internet of Things. And they have microphones and cameras built in. There's a lot that can go wrong. And yeah, I mean, you can spy on kids with it, which is
not creepy at all.
Yeah, which is.
Yeah.
Yes, I like how this article contains the phrase "target child."
There you go.
Oh God.
Simple injection. Everything was broken. Yeah, I like That's what I feel like when I look at Android apps. Like, holy.
I was gonna say, well, and a bunch of these they pair with Android phones, so that's got to be a world of fun.
And if you're getting this for your kids, you're not getting the top of the line Apple smartwatch, probably.
Right.
You're getting the cheapo Chinese.
Right, because they're
coolest.
Gonna break it, they're gonna lose it. They're gonna whatever.
Break it. Yeah.
Yep. And of course, that comes with no security and lots of SQL injections. So have fun.
I think this is true of the whole IoT space. Because everybody just buys the cheapest one they can find at Costco. nobody really looks at security. They say, oh, who cares?
Yeah, no, it was so funny because I finally got my first IoT device, which is a Wi-Fi switch, like a actual like light switch
Yeah.
that I needed for something for running my UV-C lights without being in the same room. And I took it apart. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. It's going to be so insecure. And I took it apart and I'm like, well, okay, it's all on a single chip, but it's, you know, I can't really get a shell or anything on this. So, oh, well. And then I'm like, I'll just do a man in the middle attack and get the traffic, but it has it uses like pre-baked certs and like cert checking and everything. And it's like, it wouldn't work. Like, I'm like, this thing's not terrible.
Yeah, I've had that happen too. I mean, like that Giggle app, I put it through a couple tests. It wasn't like obviously horrible. So, you know, it's not like they're all terrible. It's like maybe 10% of them are god awful.
Yeah, no, and the thing is, just because something is cheap doesn't mean that it's terrible. I mean, you can make cheap things that are not super insecure. It's just
It's just, you know, what we need is cyber UL listing. I've heard Mudge talk about it for like 8 years. Somehow it never happens. There ought to be some kind of security audit where you can put some kind of label on the box like Dolphin Safe. This thing actually doesn't have the OWASP top 10. That would be nice.
Yeah.
But we're nowhere near there somehow. Somehow we never get there. We've been talking about it for years.
I just don't think there's enough value placed on this stuff.
I think a lot of people are aware of security risks now. I think they would gladly pay a few extra bucks for some kind of security guarantee.
I think the opposite is true, Sam. I think there's a lot of people who really don't understand security and really would have no idea what an OWASP top 10 is. And if someone just says this is secure on the box, they don't care if it has a UL listing secure certification. They just see secure on the box and they'll buy it. You know,
well, no, I think this is why UL listing exists. The same thing used to be true of electricity. Common people did not understand it. And then they discovered this government lab would put the official government seal. It's like USDA grade A meat. People learned that was an important thing that mattered. It's
right.
not.
No, but look at like heaters, for example. Like you look at, like they put on the box, like this thing is like 99% efficient, which I guess is technically true because all the wasted energy in a heater turns into more heat. And people buy it thinking they're like saving a lot of money on their electric bill, and they're not. I mean, people just want to see something on the box. It doesn't matter if it's a government, if it's government endorsed or not.
I don't know. When I was a kid, those government things mattered. I remember endorsed by the comic book code. There were government stamps on most everything, and most people believed that it meant something. I don't know if it's true anymore. Anyway,
I mean, nowadays usually those stamps are on the bottom, and I can't even decipher half of them. I mean, there's like CE, then there's the FCC stuff, and then it's like, what?
Yeah, you got a point.
Yeah.
All right. Any more comments? All right, I'll stop the recording.